You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley and Jake Mastroianni with you at the end of the road for the Atlanta Braves, whose 2024 season, as challenging and as winding as that road was, it's all come to an end out in San Diego on Wednesday night as the Padres scored early and held on for a 5-4 win over the Braves, sweeping them in the brief wild card round, and now they head on to the National League Division Series against the Los Angeles Dodgers. That is what's going on for the Padres. We'll talk a lot about the postseason picture a little bit later on, but for the Atlanta Braves, this story, this odyssey, as I mentioned, these challenges that they faced all year, well, they have all come to a close in a lot of ways on Wednesday night, and we'll start unpacking some of that on this edition of the show as well. Go ahead, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube, subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today at Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. Well, Jake, we knew going into this series it was going to be a challenge. The Padres have been playing some really great baseball. They were the number one wild card seed. They have a well-rounded offense. They have a good pitching staff. And as the case was for Atlanta, a bit underpowered, dealing with some offensive issues. Some injuries, of course, have been the story all year long for this club, and just not enough to get past a team like the Padres in this brief 2 out of 3 wild card round.
Yeah, tough matchup for the Braves. I think the Padres, I talked about this in my preview of this series, I think they might be the most well-rounded team in the postseason right now, and they kind of displayed that in this quick 2-game set, and the Braves just kind of felt like they were limping in and getting in on the last day, having an injury to Chris Sale, trying to figure out game 1, offense being a little slow to start, showed some life at the end of game 2 here, but just not enough to keep up with the Padres, who are a really good team.
No, the Padres rode a big second inning against Max Fried to complete this quick sweep of the Braves in the wild card round, hanging on for a 5-4 victory. But those 5 runs, they all came pretty suddenly with 2 outs in the second inning as the run scoring got turned on, and the Braves were unable to find a way to turn it off to limit that damage. And unfortunately, that's all the Padres needed to win this game. Another early October exit for the Braves. So this one more challenging, I think, in a lot of ways, just to get there than some of the challenges the Braves have faced in the form of the Philadelphia Phillies the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, again, it feels like it's another tough matchup for the Braves. Look, and you're going to play good teams in the postseason, but I feel like the last 2 years, the Phillies were probably the best matchup for the Braves going up. And like I said, with the Padres, the way they've been playing, the best team in the second half, once again, the Braves go up against one of the better teams in baseball and another tough matchup for them. So again, you're going to have to beat good teams, but the Braves obviously just weren't equipped to do that with a lot of the pieces that they were missing. And look, they fought in these games. I know we'll get into the bullpen, but they gave them some chances in this one, and you saw a little bit of a late comeback in game 2, especially. But yeah, it's a tough draw for the Braves, but at the end of the day, you got to get it done, and you have to be able to beat some of these teams if you're going to make another magical run like they did in 2021. It's another year, and I know fans, it's frustrating as the season has been, and maybe it's understandable as this result is. It's still another year and kind of this window that you have with all this talent that goes by, and you're not able to make a deep run in the postseason.
Yeah, it just goes to show you how difficult it is to do that. Even the best built teams, a lot of them, and the clubs with the best record, they're not guaranteed to win the World Series. The Braves certainly didn't come into this postseason with the best record in the National League or the best record in baseball. Instead, as you mentioned, they kind of had to fight all the way to the final hour of the season to push their way into October, but just didn't have the squad, I feel like, to match up with the Padres and unable to avoid the big inning. I think that's a big problem for the Braves. Certainly it was in game 2. In game 1, it's difficult to win if you don't score. In fact, it's impossible. I've run the math on that, and I'm pretty sure no team ever has. Padres, let's talk about this game, though. They threatened in the first inning. Max Fried able to wriggle off the hook. A really nice job of damage control there. The San Diego bats, though, they broke through in the second inning and knocked Fried out, both literally and figuratively in a lot of ways. There was some really, really fortunate batted ball luck for the Padres. Looked good for them. They put it in play. They made the Braves make plays. They put it in the right spot. As the old saying goes, they hit it where they ain't in a lot of ways, or where they hit it. It took a while for it to get there, and they were able to use that and then really started roping the ball. The line drive off Max Fried obviously had some ill effects. Brian Snitker saying during the game that was a big factor in removing Fried, but the damage had been done at that point. Kyle Higashioka home run opened the scoring in that 5-run frame, but the next thing you know, the Padres had loaded up the bases. Manny Machado came through with a big hit that gave the Padres a big inning, and that's really all they needed in this game, unfortunately. And as you mentioned, the Braves bullpen gave them everything they possibly could over these first two games, but it does come down to, again, the woes of the offense and just not being able to do enough to avoid a loss.
It's another one of these situations. And look, you give up 5 runs in this one. I can't put it all on the offense, but it is another situation where you give up some runs early. You got plenty of time to get back in the game, but it's all the zeros that you put up there where you're not able to chip away. You're not able to get 1 run here or there. And then when Michael Harris gets that big 2-run homer late, it's not enough because you haven't been able to chip away during that time. And again, it all really just comes down to that second inning. And Max Fried's got to find a way, to get out of that inning after, get the first 2 guys out, gives up the home run, innocent solo home run. That's not going to kill you. But then just hit after hit after hit. And again, we don't know what effect that line drive ultimately had. I know Snicker saying that it did affect him, and it was kind of the reason why they decided to pull him out there. But I said I like this matchup coming in because Fried can pitch to contact, and he's okay doing that. But I also said you got to have some good batted ball luck behind that, and he didn't with 2 soft singles early in that inning, and then ultimately leaving some pitches up to Machado and Jackson Mara. What a rookie that kid is. Yeah. A couple of rookies on this day having some big games, but again, just could not get that one more out. It's unfortunate to look back at it now and you lose 5-4. All 5 of those runs coming with 2 outs in the second inning.
Yeah, and it really felt like in the first inning and in the second inning that Max Fried was having to get, 4, 5, maybe 6 outs, depending on getting some favorable results, not giving up hard hit contact, but just those plays weren't able to be made. But that is the game of baseball in a nutshell. Sometimes you are able to make those. Sometimes, the other guy is able to put it in the right spot. And the Padres did some of that. And then, as you mentioned, it wasn't all just bad batted ball luck for Max Fried. The Padres also hit him very hard in that second inning, and that is obviously not a great combination there. Manny Machado, who struck out in the first inning to strand the bases loaded, he talked a lot about, heard him after the game as well. He just wanted that opportunity for redemption. He got it against Fried, delivering in the second inning with the bases loaded and highlighting that frame as well. Atlanta's offense couldn't get anything done in game 1. It was better this time out. You brought up Michael Harris the second. I know we're not, into the silver linings portion of the show yet, and I don't know that we have that portion of the show. And if we do, it's not very long, but Michael Harris certainly makes that short list. He had an incredible, couple of games here in the postseason, and I know it's a small sample size, but considering the last couple of Octobers for Harris, nice to see him be a contributor this time around. You just wish there were more guys that could have chipped in.
This has to feel good for Michael Harris. Again, like you said, no silver linings. You lost, and I'm sure he's ultimately upset about that. But a guy that had struggled in his first couple of postseasons to come up big. I mean, and the way he finished the season too, look, it was a rough year for him. It was a rough year for a lot of Braves players with some regression and just a lot of time missed for a lot of these guys. But for Michael Harris to end the season the way he did, he was on fire that last month of the season. And then to take that into the postseason where he's had some troubles, to be able to come up big and get his team back in the game, that has to feel good for Michael Harris and hopefully leads into a big 2025. Again, I know you and I were both very high on him coming into this season, but it's kind of just another year where, injuries have kind of held him back a little bit. So again, hopefully he can kind of carry this into 2025 and have that big year that we all know he's capable of.
Yeah, and this season featured the longest stint on the IL for Michael Harris as well. I know that the early season stint in 2023 and some struggles after the fact, in fact, all the way into the month of June, certainly were not the results he was looking for. But then he got so hot over the final 3-4 months of that season, and then able to, after coming off the injured list, little bit of a slow start for about 10 days, couple of weeks, and then turned it on in the month of September. And it does just kind of go to show you that this is a kid that has, I think, an incredibly high ceiling, and we'll see how he's able to fit into the Braves plans next year, where, those plans are also going to include the return of some very key and important players for them, not the least of which is Ronald Acuna Jr., of course, Austin Riley, Spencer Strider on that list. We'll talk about a lot of that a little bit later on as we try to, I guess, put into context and maybe put to bed the 2024 season and start looking ahead to what the Braves need to do in order to make some improvements in 2025. And those opinions have already started rolling in. They are varied, and we'll get into a few of those here on the Braves Postcast. When we come back, though, we'll talk a little bit more about Max Fried. Was this his final start in an Atlanta uniform? That's one of the many questions the Braves will have to answer this winter. We will delve into that and, of course, take a look at the playoff picture at large as the Braves Postcast rolls on. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less with at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with injury insurance policy in place, so your lineup stays in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup with Prize Picks. Well, Jake, let's take a look at the final box score of the 2024 season. I know that there may be a light smattering of applause out there because there have been some rough box scores that we've had to go over this year. There's just no two ways about it. The San Diego Padres advanced, sweeping the Braves 2-0 in this best 2 out of 3 wild card round. The Braves with 4 runs on 6 hits, no errors, just 3 men left on base, not as many opportunities on this night. Padres 5 runs, they all came in the second inning, 10 hits, and no errors. They left 8 men on base. The losing pitcher, Max Fried, drops to 0-1. The win in relief goes to Hoeing, who picks up, obviously, his first win of the postseason as well in this opening round series. He came on in relief of Joe Musgrove. That's worth talking about as well. All was not dandy for the Padres in this one. They had to deal with their starting pitcher, an important one at that, leaving this game in the 4th inning with an apparent elbow injury. That's something that had affected Joe Musgrove negatively here in the 2024 season and appears to have reared its ugly head at a very bad time. So hopefully nothing major, but not a lot to report at this moment until he undergoes, I'm sure, some more tests. But let's talk a little bit about the Braves starting pitcher, Max Fried. 2 innings, 5 earned runs, 8 hits, couple of strikeouts, a home run also on his line, hit by a line drive in the hip that came off the bat at 100 miles an hour. I can't imagine that felt too good. I also can't imagine that second inning on the whole felt too good for Max Fried. And, that's just kind of part of the game of baseball. And he was unable to find a way to work out of all that traffic for a second consecutive inning.
Yeah, unfortunate, like I said, especially if this is the last game for Max Fried in a Braves uniform. Hate to see him go out like that. Know what he's capable of. We've talked about it before, just what he's meant to this franchise and some of the big games that he's pitched. It's just he could not get that final out that he needed to just limit it in the second inning there. And again, gave up a couple of soft hits in that inning that kind of kept it going, and then made some mistakes to Machado and Jackson Merrill that I'm sure he'd love to have back. But again, what effect did that long first inning have? What did affected that line drive have off of him? Certainly, as you said, even in the first inning, was kind of struggling as well, and just didn't seem like Max Fried. Just an unfortunate time for him to have a game like this, a game that the Braves, needed. They needed him to go out there and certainly pitch well. But again, I know we'll talk more about it. The bullpen, followed him up and kept him in the game and picked him up there and gave the team a chance. But that's not how Max Fried wanted his season to end, and again, possibly his Braves tenure to end going out like that.
No, not at all. Fried has been an integral part of the Braves' success over the past 7 seasons. If this was, in fact, the last ride, no, this is not the way that he would want it to go out. And I feel like in so many ways, after watching what he was able to do to the Kansas City Royals over the course of the weekend, you felt like, hey, if there's a warm-up for the postseason against another club that, by the way, has already gone to the postseason and advanced in its series, you kind of felt like maybe Max Fried is coming into, hitting his stride, I guess, so to speak. At the very least, he's not sick as a dog, and he wasn't dealing with a blister issue. And those in and of themselves were frustrations from both 2022 and 2023. But the Padres knocked him around and pushed him out of the game. And I know that whether it was the line drive of the hip, or obviously you look at the line score and what Max Fried had to do over the course of those 2 innings, at this point, when you're facing elimination and you're Brian Snitker and the Braves, I think you kind of have to look at it like, all right, well, we've got our bullpen rested. Let's figure out a way to piece it together from here, because it doesn't serve you at all to allow your starting pitcher to continue to get into long innings like that and dig you into an even bigger hole. A 5-0 deficit is enough. So I'm sure it's more than enough on a lot of days. You just couldn't let it go any further. I feel like had to be part of that decision-making process as well.
Yeah, and I think, from what it sounded like, Snicker in that in-game interview too, which, by the way, I don't like in-game interviews, but at least it did give us some update on that, is that it sounded like a big part of the decision was, Max Fried not feeling well from taking that ball off the hip there. But as you said, he just didn't look like himself. He had to really battle just to get through those first 2 innings. So it kind of made sense there. I thought they might at least send him back out and let him go batter to batter, just see if he could give him another inning or two. But turning it over to the bullpen seemed to be the good thing to do in this series. Look, starting pitching has carried this team all year long. We know that. You got 3 1/3 innings out of your starting pitching in this series. And I know AJ Smith-Shawver was, a unique circumstance there, as maybe was going to be more of an opener anyway. But the thing that got you here, what carried you all year long, just wasn't there. Either wasn't available, or in the case of Max Fried, just wasn't able to show up and perform.
No, the Braves bullpen over 12 2/3 innings in these 2 games, allowing exactly 1 run. It came on a solo homer, allowing exactly 3 hits as well. This bullpen was seriously stepped up. You had Dylan Lee, you had Daysbel Hernandez as well, who stepped in, I felt like, and threw some critical innings just to keeping the game right where it was. And I know for quite a while it was 5-0, then it was 5-1, it was 5-1, and then it was 5-2. And then you got the 2 runs late. I mean, it seems like forever ago that the Braves very quickly scored the first run of the game for Max Fried before he even had to go out and get to work in that first inning. But the 5 runs that the Padres scored in the bottom of the second obviously put the Braves behind the 8 ball and pushed their ace left-hander out of this game. But Daysbel Hernandez did some good work as well. Pierce Johnson and Joe Jimenez covering the final 2 innings of scoreless baseball for the Braves in this one. But 3 1/3 innings out of your starters, not something that you probably had on the list, considering how much of a strength that has been for the Braves on the whole on this season. Obviously, what you got out of the rotation, it needed to be more. The Chris Sale issue, which we can get to in a moment, didn't help you out in that regard either. But anything that the bullpen did to try to counteract what was going wrong with the rotation wasn't going to solve the other side, as Atlanta's offense managed 4 runs in the series. They all came in game 2, the 5-4 loss. I mean, when you don't score enough runs, and when you don't do, as you talked about a little bit earlier, some amount of chipping away to give you that chance where, hey, maybe all of a sudden that 2-run homer means a lot more, and you have the opportunity to take a lead. Those are the little things that for the Braves in 2024, we talked about them time and time again. Those opportunities, a lot of them were left out on the base paths.
To me, it came down to that top of the 6, because the bullpen kept putting up zeros, and you thought, okay, you're in the game, you got a chance here. Soler hits that solo home run. It's all of a sudden a three-run game, and you feel like you got a little bit of a shot there. And then that 6th inning comes, and the Braves smoke 5 baseballs, 4 of them over 100 miles per hour, and you got 2 singles out of it and no runs scored. And look, I'm not trying to defend this offense that has been bad this year, but it also feels like, Grant, they've been bad, but when they have hit the baseball well, it's been terrible batted ball luck. It's been right at somebody, and it's just, you can't have both of those things. You can't be bad, and then you can't have nothing go your way when you do make good contact. But for me, it was that 6th inning, because those were the best at-bats I saw in this series. And you couldn't get anything out of it. You had 2 line drives right to the left fielder. You had the great play by Manny Machado on Ozzie Albies ball that got an out at second base there. I mean, for me, that was kind of the inning. You had your top of the order coming up. You were having great contact. You just got nothing to show for it. And like I said, if you're able to chip away a run there, which, by the way, Michael Harris was on with 1 out again and didn't run and ultimately didn't score. But again, that to me was the inning where it just felt like those are some of the best at-bats I saw. You got nothing out of it. And then as a result, you're not able to chip a run across. And then that Michael Harris home run, doesn't tie it up or give you the lead. So again, it's kind of some of those middle innings. After you score in the first inning, you really did nothing for the next 4 or 5 innings outside of the Soler home run. And then you're trying to, get all those runs in the last 2 or 3 innings of the game against a very good bullpen.
Yeah, and that's not going to be easy. The Padres, in addition to having a very capable starting staff, we saw what Michael King was able to do. Obviously, the Musgrove early exit didn't help, but they had the relievers to be able to cover the middle innings and get it to their high leverage guys at the end. who weren't going to give up much. You wouldn't imagine, just based on who they are and how good they've been this year. But Atlanta's offense, I think the story a lot of nights, and too many nights, as a matter of fact, was the missed opportunities and the inability to chip away or to come up with a big hit that could turn it into a big inning even. It just didn't seem to be in the cards a lot of times for the Braves. And I don't think that the solution to all of that is, try not to hit the ball hard. Maybe there's some approach, aspects that could certainly improve. Nobody is disputing that. But, you can't necessarily game plan to do what the Padres did in the first and second innings. It just doesn't work that way.
And you got to do it more often. Like that sixth inning, like I said, was the only inning really that you saw in this series where it was just good at bats up and down. And when you aren't doing that consistently, and at least 4 or 5 innings of a game, then you're not going to be able to chip away. You're not going to be able to consistently put runs on the board. So again, I'm pointing out one inning where they hit the ball really well, but you got to be able to do it in more than one inning. It's just with this offense, it doesn't have a lot of chances. And when you do hit the ball like that, you really hope you're getting rewarded.
Yeah, consistency was unfortunately just not a thing for the Braves offense far too often over the course of the season. I feel like a broken record in this segment. I feel like a broken record over the course of the season, but unfortunately that has kind of been their fate. When we come back, we will talk a little bit more about the 2024 season, put a bow, get some final thoughts on that. We'll talk about the winter to come, including maybe what the future holds for Max Fried. And we'll take a look at the playoff picture at large across Major League Baseball going forward, as the Braves obviously not going to be a part of that. That comes your way next as the Braves Postcast continues. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Explore those U.S. cities that you always secretly wanted to learn more about. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more, Booking.com, you just might find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city during the postseason. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball competition stadium cuisine. Luckily on Booking.com, you can find a stadium stay that's just right for you. And with the wide variety of choices across the U.S. on Booking.com, you can go incognito to all those baseball rival cities. And Booking.com can also help you book a stay that's close to your home team or rival team stadium so that you don't have to miss a game. And no matter what team you're rooting for this postseason, Booking.com can make you a fan of that U.S. city. The right stay will make you a fan of any U.S. city. As a matter of fact, even your baseball rivals, Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Well, a couple of, final thoughts on the 2024 Braves, on the wild card run that obviously did not last very long, or the postseason run that did not advance out of the wild card round. Ultimately, losing Chris Sale became a bit of a non-story given the shutout in Game 1. The final injury blow, though, for the Braves here this season was a cruel twist because there was so much discussion, Jake, about having Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez healthy and ready to throw big innings for you. And the two of them were able to throw exactly 0 innings in October, and not to, completely to their fault, even with their late season injury woes. This was just a Braves club that if it could go wrong, it did go wrong to some extent, it felt like this year.
It'd be nice to have a year, Grant, where the Braves get into the postseason and we don't have to worry about a pitcher that's getting injured or that's banged up going into the. And I know all pitchers are fighting through something, but it's just at least 3 years in a row that the Braves have had at least one starter that was really good and healthy for most of the season, but then gets hurt at just the worst possible time. And we talked about it. I thought the Braves did everything they could early in this year to keep those guys fresh, to keep them healthy, both, Sale and Reynaldo Lopez specifically. And it's just unfortunate timing. I mean, there's nothing else you can really say about it. And again, it might not have mattered because the Braves didn't score in Game 1, but still you would have liked to have Sale there to give you that chance, maybe match zeros and see what happens. You never know how a game's going to play out differently. And it's unfortunate. I don't know what else you can really do, but again, the Braves would love to have a year where, first of all, you get some more health out of your rotation. Not you lose Spencer Strider in the first month of the season. You don't have him either. But to be going into a postseason and have your rotation as ready and as healthy as they can be, Braves just haven't had that. But again, we can talk about the pitching all day long. For the past 3 postseasons now, it's really been a lot of focus on the offense and just their inability to score in big situations.
Yeah, I mean, even last year when there were questions about, all right, well, who's going to start this game? And there were injury issues to deal with. The Braves didn't pitch themselves out of the postseason on the whole against Philadelphia even. I mean, Spencer Strider threw well enough in 2 starts to keep the game close. And you thought with that kind of offense, maybe they would figure it out. And you're right, offensively speaking, whether it was 2022 against the Phillies, 2023 against the Phillies, and here in 2024 against the Padres. It's easy to get frustrated about what it has looked like and unfortunately what it has not looked like in October in some of those years. And while a lot of things went wrong this year, getting healthy for 2025 could also go a long way, as this was a season that challenged the Braves more than any that I can think of. And somehow they still managed to at least check in to October, though they didn't stay long. And things in 2025 that should offer them a little bit more of an opportunity includes the health of some very, very important players. You mentioned Spencer Strider, Ronald Acuna Jr., Austin Riley. The questions abound beyond that about what the Braves can do to fortify their roster, maybe to take a long look at some stuff that just wasn't going right this year and make some much needed adjustments in other avenues and other areas of this game. But getting healthy would go a long way towards getting the Braves back to feeling like the club that is as dangerous as it has been in the past and just was not really able to ever get to or maintain consistently at all in 2024.
6 innings of having your main roster together all year, your opening day lineup together. I mean, it's not just the injuries, it's the the guys who got injured in the time that they missed. And you can look at guys who are having regression, which, by the way, a lot of really good hitters were struggling at the beginning of the year that picked it up in the second half. Braves hitters didn't get to that second half of the season where the offense picked up around baseball, including Ron Acuna Jr. So getting those guys back obviously going to help. I think there does need to be a conversation in the off season about hitting philosophy and their approach at the plate. I think that certainly needs to happen. Look, if everybody's healthy and everybody's hitting 30 to 40 home runs, you don't have to worry about that. But when you do have injuries and you are struggling to score in big games in the postseason like that, I think there at least needs to be a conversation about our hitting philosophy and what that looks like.
Now, look, Chipper Jones is not wrong with the, focus on situational hitting needing to be at least re-examined, reevaluated, and maintain, be a fluid conversation over the course of the year, because you're right. When you got a whole lineup that's hitting 307 home runs and scoring 950 runs, you're probably not really thinking too much about that. But this offense this year was not that. So it will be interesting to see what exactly the Braves do in that regard. Now, questions also abound when it comes to the winter. In particular, did we see the last of Max Fried in a Braves uniform? Is Charlie Morton going to call it a career after 17 years in the big leagues? Those have been two important parts of the Braves rotation. I know that this conversation about free agency for Max Fried has been going on for a while, and I know that people have kind of wondered how many years are the Braves going to bring back Charlie Morton, but I feel like this winter, more so than any other, those answers to those questions may finally be a little bit different than they have been the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be an interesting offseason. Coming into this year, you really wondered what the future of the rotation looked like with potentially losing Fried and Charlie Morton. I actually feel much better about that. Obviously, a lot depends on Chris Sale and his health going into next year. But, I mean, having a rotation of Sale, Strider back, Ronaldo Lopez, Spencer Schwellenbach, and some young guys who could be coming up and contributing as well, I feel much better about the rotation long term. Like I felt for a while that Max Fried's going to be gone. The only way I think maybe he comes back if he gets a Blake Snell type deal of 1 to 2 years at maybe a high AAV, 28-30 million. I've always thought he'd get the Carlos Rodon deal of 6 years, 160 million, about 27-28 a year. He's worked that. I mean, he's pitched that, but it's also a guy going into his age 31 season, having some injury issues in the past. So it's interesting to see what he's going to get. And I think Charlie Morton is going to hang it up. And I certainly think if the Braves bring him back, it can't be at the same price that they've been paying him.
No, I don't think that it would be. I think that at this point, that has probably run its course in a lot of ways. And one of the reasons why is Spencer Schwellenbach's emergence is a huge part of that. Sale and Lopez clearly made the Braves rotation strong over the course of the year. Again, it's unfortunate that the timing at the end of the season, Chris Sale missed out on what would turn out to be his only opportunity to throw in a postseason game as the Braves were eliminated by San Diego. But getting Spencer Strider back into that mix, and he hopes to be ready as soon as the early part of the season, if not ready in spring training. And then there's the winter to go out and figure out what else you need to do. Will they address shortstop? Will they make some other moves around in their outfield? And just having Austin Riley, Ronald Acuna Jr. Back in the mix for this, I think you're right. I mean, Riley was showing in the second half that he was swinging the bat better. And I feel like we all do, and I'm sure Ronald Acuna Jr. feels the same, that we got robbed in that regard of one of the bright young stars in all of baseball. Putting that all aside, though, we have to buckle in, watch the postseason play out before the winter arrives. I'm feeling this Padres club to make a run in the National League. I'm with you. I think they're one of the most well-rounded teams in it. This may be recency bias because the game ended, I don't know, less than an hour ago. But no jokes on this Padres team. I think they're as good and as dangerous as anybody in this postseason field. I'm going to kind of ride with them throughout the course of the rest of the postseason in the National League side. But I'd be remiss not to tell you that over in the American League, Stephen Vogt, what he did in Cleveland, I'm interested to see what the Guardians can do. That's my pick over there. How about you?
Yeah, I really like this Padres teams as we talked about. Obviously, a lot maybe depend on Joe Musgrove and his health. That obviously would be a big loss in that rotation. But I think they have some deep pitchers in there. Yu Darvish wasn't even expected to pitch in this series. They got Dylan Cease lined up for Game 1. We saw how deep that bullpen is, and that offense I just think is relentless top to bottom. So they got a good chance going up against the Dodgers. That's going to be a really fun series to watch. But I do like one of those two teams to come out of the National League. I think whoever wins it's going to come out of the National League. I like the Phillies, Dodgers, and the Padres better than anybody out of the American League. But I like those Royals. That's a team that I'm cheering for. I think they're really fun. I love Bobby Witt Jr., so that's a team I'll be cheering for over there.
I mean, there's no shortage of great stories over there. I mean, the Guardians won the division unexpectedly in the Central, but then you had the Royals get in. You just, talked about how exciting they are, Bobby Witt Jr., and then, man, the Detroit Tigers in the last, 5-6 weeks of the season. How in the world did they get here? And they were able to knock out a club that had gone to the ALCS. Was that 6 or 7 consecutive years?
7,
yeah, for the Houston Astros. That's a way to send a message in the postseason. So don't overlook anybody over there. We'll see how it all plays out. It's just unfortunate that the Braves and their ride in 2024 was not able to take them any further than this wild card round against the San Diego Padres. Well, Jake, we have reached the end of not only this edition of the Braves Postcast, but this season of the Braves Postcast as well. I always enjoy sitting down with you after these games. I appreciate the fact that we've been able to do this for a number of years now, and we'll see what the winter has in store. I know you're going to keep yourself very busy over on Locked On Braves.
Yeah, we don't stop in the offseason over at Locked On Braves. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting and fun offseason over there. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves. And Grant, always enjoy doing this with you. It's great to get to learn from you, a true professional. So thank you for all that you do here on the Postcast. It's been a rough year, I'll say that, but at least working with you and doing this Postcast has been a lot of fun, and look forward to doing it all the time.
Oh, thank you kindly. I appreciate that. We never get to pick what the script is going to be for the season. We just take the ride through 162, and if that goes well, maybe you get to play a few more weeks. That wasn't the case here in 2024, but I've also heard that life is not necessarily about the destination, it's about the journey, and I think that's probably true of a lot of baseball seasons, though they're not all created equal, that's for sure. Jake, thanks for all your time. I appreciate you as always. Everyone make sure that you are subscribed to Locked On Braves, as Jake will keep you up to date on everything going on with the Braves. And you got my number, so give me a call if you happen to get bored and need another voice over the course of the winter. We'd like to thank all of you for joining us all season long here on the Braves Postcast. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. A lot of great content going on over there. Leave us those likes, comments, share the show with a friend, and subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. 2024 season in the books for the Atlanta Braves and for us. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. Until next time, so long, everyone.